Last year when Samsung launched the Galaxy S20 Ultra, it promised a buckload with its massive 108 megapixel camera. It was a buccaneering move and it was ballsy, and it gave a sense to all of us that it had finally upped the ante and caught up to Apple and Google in the camera department. But that's not exactly what happened, did it? There were tons of issues with the Galaxy S20 Ultra, and it was their first Ultra branded smartphone. But when I talk about this phone, the Galaxy S21 Ultra, then I got to say that Samsung has wholeheartedly redeemed itself. How? Well, that's what this video is all about. You guys are watching Warpcore Tech. My name is Sahil. Let's do this. Now, the story of this phone starts with its box, which I have hidden somewhere here. Well, the bigger thing about the box is that it is slim like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and it does not have a charging brick. For me, the charging brick is not that much of a big deal because you get great charging solutions from AMX India. You get a great 60-watt charger which you can easily use for this phone, and you can get it for a very affordable amount. What really triggers me a little bit more is the fact that there are no earphones, no USB Type-C earphones. Well, Apple also removed their earpods, right? But the big deal out here is that Samsung really offered really good AKG earphones because Samsung owns AKG and they were really top class, and now you don't get them. So that's a bit of a miss because if you were to buy them separately, they would easily cost 3 to 4K. So that's a bit of a miss, but the moment you get this phone out of that box, then you know that Samsung has created something special. While the Galaxy S20 Ultra was bulbous, boring, and huge, this one, apart from being huge, is just something else. From the front, it looks pretty much the same. Yes, you have another massive screen. It's 6.8 inches, which is pretty much the same size as the S20 Ultra. It's got all kinds of jargons out here. It's a Samsung display. Every time a Samsung flagship phone comes out, which is usually 2 to 3 times a year, the display mate guys usually rate it the best screen on the planet on a mobile phone. And even though I haven't seen any display mate numbers for this one, I'm pretty sure this phone is going to top those charts, beat out the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is currently the champion. Though, even if it beats it out, it's not going to be by much, but there's some really interesting things that you should know. Insane levels of brightness, up to 1500 nits, which is basically class leading. Quad HD, dynamic AMOLED. Dynamic AMOLED basically means that it is 120 Hz, but it's got LTPO technology, so it can ramp down all the way up to 10 Hz when you're witnessing something like this wallpaper, which is basically static content. Samsung has also revealed that this is a new generation of display which is leveraging some new technology processes that help it make 15% more power efficient. Now, apart from its visual fidelity and gloriousness, this display is actually worth the hype in terms of its power efficiency, because we have never seen a phone with a high refresh rate be so efficient managing battery life. Another effect of that comes through because of the new processor, the Exynos 2100, which is also built on a 5 nanometer process. And of course, you get a lot of battery optimizations on the software side of things and a humongous 5000 mAh battery, about which I'm going to talk a bit more. But what's really admirable is that they have managed to cram in so much in this slender frame, which feels significantly more ergonomic than the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Even though I still prefer the 12 Pro Max in terms of looks because of those magnetic geometric lines, this also feels equally sexy but more ergonomic because of these curved edges and curved spine. And on the back you get this glorious phantom black finish. I remember a couple of years ago when I was reviewing the iPhone 7, which had that matte black finish. I called it Batman smartphone on Gizmodo. That was my headline. Well, if that phone was more like Ben Affleck's Batman, then I'm surely thinking that Samsung, at a bare minimum, feels that this should be either Michael Keaton's Batman or Christian Bale's Batman. Well, who knows, Robert Pattinson may also turn out to be pretty good. And one of the reasons for that is the iPhone 7 did not age well with that finish because it was an all metal phone, did not have wireless charging. So oxidization kicked in and that metal paint started chipping away. That's not going to be a problem on this phone because A, it has wireless charging, which forces them to have glass on the back instead of metal. This phone has Gorilla Glass Victus, which is amongst the toughest glasses that you can even imagine, and it doesn't get scratched. What's even wondrous is that it just does not attract any kind of smudges. While doing so, it's also IP68 water and dust resistant, and you get this contrasting polished finish on the side, which kind of makes this phone a little more grippier and less susceptible to slips. Overall, it feels really solid and it is a really well built phone. Even though this one has an aluminum frame and the iPhone 12 Pro Max has a stainless steel frame. Who cares? It's the feeling that matters, right? It's the feeling. But going back to the battery life, one of the reasons that battery life is so good is because of the new Exynos chip in this phone. The Exynos 2100 is built on a 5 nanometer process, which is cutting edge, like the A14 Bionic on the iPhone 12 Pro Max or the iPad Air or the new M1 Max or the Snapdragon 888 version of this phone, which also gets a 5 nanometer process. Now, one of the things that was really problematic about the Galaxy S20 Ultra, the international version of that phone, which used the Exynos 990 chip, was the general performance and efficiency of that processor. Well, none of those issues are prevalent in this phone. This phone is fast, furious, and very efficient. Great battery life is a hallmark. It does not get warm at all. They are using the new Cortex X1 cores. Samsung has abandoned their Mongoose cores and they're using a more standardized ARM architecture out here. And the end result is just great performance, superb multitasking, great gaming performance. Games look gorgeous and they run fast and you can run them for a very long time because it's got great battery life, right? And if you're thinking, is this phone still going to be inferior to the Snapdragon model, Snapdragon 888 model in the US? Then there may be minute differences, but it's not going to be a deal breaker like last year where the Snapdragon version of the phone was at least 30 to 40% faster and provided at least 25 to 30% more battery life. You're not going to have those differences. They are going to be very minute differences, so it's not going to matter. Even though I haven't tested a Snapdragon 888 phone flat out, there are a lot of leaked benchmarks, and even Ershad at My Smart Price has done a great video between the Mi 11 and the S21 Ultra, which kind of reveals that. So that's there. Samsung has also taken pains to fix minor issues. One of the major ones was the fingerprint scanner. So they've upgraded to a new Qualcomm ultrasonic sensor, which is just fast and it's bigger. It's got a bigger touch area. And even if you use this unsecure Face ID type solution provided by the front facing camera, then it's going to do a very good job and it's going to unlock your phone very quickly. Comes in particularly handy during COVID times if you're wearing a mask, because the iPhone on the other hand just supports Face ID and it kind of reverts back to the pin, which is really irritating, and it is slow also at the same time. The other main killer feature of this phone are the cameras. I really like how this camera bump firstly sort of swoops. It's like they've sliced a full layer out of this phone, chiseled it out and just left the camera array out here. So it's like really seamlessly integrated, and you get 4 great cameras. You get a new generation 108 megapixel sensor, you get a 3x telephoto camera, you get a 10x telephoto camera, and you get a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, new generation sensor with a field of view of 120 degrees. All of this is supported by a laser autofocus system and a sophisticated stabilization system. And these are really keys to Samsung's secret sauce, which gets rid of all the issues that were there on the S20 Ultra. On the front, you get a 40 megapixel sensor, which, by the way, according to me, is one of the best selfie cameras around now. Now, let's talk shop about this camera. The main 108 megapixel camera can output photos at 108 megapixels if you use the Pro mode. But generally, for most people, it's going to do it at 12 megapixel using a technique called oversampling. It downsizes the resolution by 9x by doing oversampling, creating super pixels, making the photos more light sensitive, enhancing their dynamic range, and generally make them really usable, because a 108 megapixel resolution on a phone with a sensor this tiny, even though it's one of the largest sensors you'll ever see on a smartphone, just does not make sense and resolve very well. And the end result is great photos in daylight, great low light photography. The focusing issues have gone, even though they can crop up at times a teensy bit, but you get a macro mode which is powered by the ultra wide camera, so close-up shots look really beautiful, and that's something the iPhone can't do. And similarly, the iPhone can't see as far as this phone, because you get really superb 3x optical zoom, which is already more than the 12 Pro Max, and then you get a highly useful 10x zoom. And then if you are a peeping Tom, then you get 30x and 100x space zoom, which, by the way, now is the best in the business. Using 30x or 100x, you can literally shoot for the moon. They've got a new focus locking mechanism which makes camera shake much more usable when you are zooming in at insane levels. Long story short, nighttime photos are kind of behind the iPhone, but very close to the Pixel and Vivo X50 Pro. Basically, the difference is so minuscule that you can't tell. It really tends to overly brighten things up. Which is kind of a Samsung technique. It also oversaturates photos. It's a personal preference. Most people I have interviewed kind of like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, but this is also a very good solution, particularly if you're going to be taking photos in extreme scenarios, like you'll need that extreme zoom, or you'll need that extreme macro mode provided by the ultra wide camera, or you want a really bright shot because you are in really dim light. That's where 8's night mode shines through. But overall, I would say this is the best Android smartphone camera system right now. It is easily the most versatile camera system that you can get on a smartphone right now. But it is probably, for most people, going to be slightly inferior to the iPhone 12 Pro Max. No big deal, because you kind of trade that off with more features. The story kind of remains the same if you talk about video. Now, all of these cameras can shoot 4K 60 frames per second, which is great. It also provides great stabilization, best video basically on an Android smartphone, great audio also, but again, it falls behind the iPhone. It doesn't do video as well as the iPhone, even the older generation 11 Pro. But Samsung is still doing a pretty good job. For most people, this is going to get the job done, which is going to be the main calling card. You also get a lot of features. Apple's app is really bare bones. On the opposite, Samsung's app is filled with hidden features, like something called director mode, which kind of gives you a bird's eye view of what all you are doing while you're shooting video. For instance, if you want to sort of get a view of all the other cameras, you can sort of get a preview out here, and it will give you a bird's eye view of the other lenses. So there are tons of features, but that's basically the thing with Samsung's phones is that the software isn't as elegant, and that's really reflective in the camera, but also through and through the Android software. So you are getting one UI 3.0 out here, which is based on Android 11, but it is not as elegant as stock Android. It gets a lot of duplicate apps, but there are some niceties about it as well. For instance, deep integration with Microsoft services. But overall, it is a little clunky. It's not as visually appealing, but that's the thing about Android. You can change everything. That's what I have done out here with Nova Launcher out here. But if you're just thinking about buying this phone and thinking, yo, is this going to be a great phone? Well, fret not. This is going to be a great phone. Even if you're a fan of the Galaxy Note series, this is going to be a great phone because you can get S Pen, which is now compatible. If you use an old Galaxy Note and you want to just buy the new phone, you can use the old S Pen. You can buy a new S Pen, which will also need another case. That's another thing. Samsung is also working on an S Pen Pro, which will provide you almost an identical Galaxy Note-like experience. So now all of that is supported by the S21 Ultra, which is great. So there are lots of things that this phone just provides that an iPhone cannot. So for a lot of people, this is going to be the best premier smartphone in the world. But still, head on my heart, gun to my head, whatever you want to call it, I would still say the 11 Pro Max is a better phone for most people, but then again, it is 25,000 rupees more expensive. If your budget gets locked in at around 1,05,000 rupees, and or maybe you want more storage for lesser, then this is the phone to go for. And if you love Android, then it's just a no-brainer, because if you can't get your head wrapped around iOS or Apple's walled garden, then again, this is going to be the numero uno. Samsung has indeed redeemed itself. The Galaxy S21 Ultra is a redemption moment for Samsung, and it is a return to greatness. This is a truly great smartphone. Yep, that's pretty much it on the S21 Ultra. And if you like this video, do like and subscribe. Otherwise, the other one also works pretty well. Cheers. See you later.